What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be starting a new series called From Design to Code. So I'm going to be taking various designs, either websites or apps, and coding them. In this video, I'm going to be using Chakra UI and Next.js to create a dashboard. Let's jump into it. So all of the code for this video can be found on my GitHub, and you can also find the name of every tool I'm using along with the version and the website. Additionally, here is a live demo. So as you can see, we can scroll the middle and the right section. We can expand the table, and it is responsive. So as we get smaller, you'll notice everything shrinks. This table is scrollable along the x-axis. We see the left nav bar goes to just icons, and eventually it will stack on top of each other. So the first thing we're going to do is go over the basic setup for this project. So here are the dependencies that I'm using. Go ahead and add all of these. In app.js, we need to add our Chakra provider and wrap our page component. Go ahead and create a new file named dashboard. This is where all of the work will be. As you can see, I imported everything we need. We have our React, useState, all of our Chakra components, and all of our icons from React icons. We also have this chart component, which currently is just an empty component, but that is where we're going to be adding the chart. And we're going to be using a bit of CSS inside of the globals.css file. So the way we're going to code this is we're going to start with the left column, then we're going to do the middle column, and finally we're going to end with the third column. And for all the columns, we're basically going to work top down. So let's first add all of the columns, declare the background color and the width, and then we'll start with the left column. So for our main overall flex, we're going to give this a height of 100 view height. We are going to make the flex direction a row, and we're going to set the overflow to hidden. And this will allow us to make these columns scrollable. We're also going to set the max width to 2000 pixels. Now inside of here, we're going to declare 3 flex tags for each of the 3 columns. So this will be column 1, and we need 2 more of these. We'll have column 2 and column 3. Now for the first column, we're going to give this a width of 15%. So going back to the design, we can see this first column here is about 15% of the screen. We're going to set the flex direction to a column. We're going to align the items to the center, and we're going to set the background color to not black, but almost black. So the hex we're going to be using is hex 020202. And then we're going to set the color, so the text color, to white, or hex FFF. Now if we go back and look at what we have so far, there we go. So we have 100 view height, a width of 15%, and a black background. Now let's go ahead and add the content. Basically everything is going to be wrapped with a flex tag. So this whole column is already in a flex. These nav items will be in a flex. The icon and the text will be in their own flex. And then this bottom portion will have its own flex. So let's declare a flex tag. The flex direction here will be column. And we're going to say justify content to space between. And the reason I'm doing that is because this part up here and this bottom part will be opposite of each other. Now inside of here, we're going to have 2 more flex tags. This first tag, we're going to say flex direction equal to column, and we're going to use the as property to set this to a nav tag. So the flex widget renders to a div tag, so we can use this property to set the div to any tag we want. In this case, we're going to use the semantic nav tag so that the browser knows that this is the navigation. Now the first nav item we need is the heading. And this is rise. And we're going to add a couple of styles on this. We're going to give it margin top of 50. We're going to set the margin bottom equal to 100. We're going to set the font size to 4XL. And we're going to say align self to center. And we're also going to make the letter spacing tight. And you might be wondering where I'm getting this 4XL and this tight letter spacing from. And that is simply coming from the default theme. So this is the default theme you get when you install Chakra. Here are the default colors. And here are some typography settings. So as you can see, fonts, font sizes. Here's the 4XL that renders to 2.25 rem. And we also have the letter spacing here. So I'm using tight, which renders to negative 0.025 em. So that's where I'm getting all that from. Let's go ahead and format this up. We can use Option-Shift-F for that. Next, we need a flex, and this will contain our nav items. Again, we're going to make the flex direction here a column. We're going to align the items to flex start, and we're going to say justify content center. Now inside of here, we're going to have an individual flex for each of the nav items. So this is the container that is holding all of this, and then this flex here is one of these. So we're going to build out the first one, and then we're going to copy and paste that 3 more times. So we're going to give this a class name of sidebar items. Now inside of here, we're going to use the link tag. And we're actually going to have 2 link tags. The first link will wrap around the icon. We're going to set this icon to FI home. Again, I'm using React icons, specifically the feather icons. You can find those here. We're going to give this a font size of 2XL. And then we're going to give this a class name of active icon. So if we go back to the design, we can see that the first icon and text are active. So we're going to apply those styles. And then the second link will contain the text. And this text is simply home. Again, we're going to set the class name to this text to active. And then we need to add some styles on the link. So we're going to say hover. And on hover, we basically want to remove any text decoration. So we'll just set that to none. Okay, there we go. Now you see we hover and nothing's happening. And again, this doesn't look too good right now, but we're going to use the sidebar items class name to apply additional styles inside of globals.css. But first, let's copy and paste all of this. Paste it 1 time. Let's remove the active classes. And we'll copy and paste this 2 more times. So now we see it 4 times. And let's go ahead and change the text and the icons. Okay, so now we have all of our items. Let's go ahead and open up globals.css. And if you don't have this already imported, you want to import that inside of app.js. Let's first style the active classes. So we'll say .active. This is the text. So we want to give this a color of white when it's active. And for the active icon, we want to give this a pinkish color. And the hex for this is B5 7295. And if we go back here, we see it's not coming through. So we need to add the important keyword, and there we go. Now we see it. Now let's go ahead and style these sidebar items. Let's first set the color to gray, and let's set the font size to large. And you can see we get the Chakra values in here as well. Now we're going to style the icon and the text. So to access those, we can say .sidebar items. And to get the text, we can say P, because that's a P tag. Let's just set the margin left to 1 EM. There we go. And now we want to style the hover. So when we hover, we should change this to the active classes. So we'll say .sidebar items, hover. On hover, we want to change the P tag, and we also need one of these for the SVG tag. First, for the P tag, we're just going to change this to a color of white. And for the SVG, we want to change that to our pinkish color. Now if we try that out, there we go. So we can hover and it changes. Finally, let's give some margin on the bottom. Now we only want to give margin to the first 3 children, so not the last child. So we can do that by saying .sidebar items, and then we can use the not keyword. We don't want to give it to the last child. And then we can set the margin bottom to 1.5 EM. So that will give margin bottom to this child, and this child, but not this child because it's the last one. And that's our little nav section there. So the last thing to do in this left column is this bottom part. And this bottom part will be very, very simple. We just have an avatar, and we have some text. So the text is the name. In this case, we have Calvin West. And then the avatar, we're going to give it some margin on the top and bottom. Set that to 2. And the SRC will be avatar-1.jpg. And I have all of the avatars inside of my public directory. Again, you can get this from the GitHub. So there it goes. Now we just have to add some styles to this. First off, set the flex direction to column. We'll align the items to the center. We'll give margin bottom, set that to 10. And we'll set the margin top equal to 5. And for the text, we're just going to text align this to the center. And make sure you spell avatar1 correctly. Now I'm noticing that this is not being justified to the bottom, so the space between is not coming through. Yes, and that is because we need to set the height to 100 view height. And now that is justified to the bottom. So we have space between this flex and this flex. And that's it for the left navigation column. So that is all built out. Now let's move to this middle column. We'll start at the top and work our way down. So first off, let's declare some styles on this flex. We're going to make the width equal to 55%. Make the padding 3%. Change the flex direction to column. We'll set the overflow to auto. And this will allow us to scroll like you saw on that table when the screen gets small enough, as opposed to messing up the display. And we're going to set the min height equal to 100 view height. And that is because if we set this to height, we wouldn't be able to scroll. And if we had too much content, it would be squished. So by setting it to the min height, we are allowing the user to scroll on the screen. And you'll see what I mean when we add some content. And no need to set a background color here, because the background is supposed to be white. But before we build out the rest of this column, I want to set the background color on this column just so we can distinguish where this column ends. So for that, move on to Flex 3. First, set the width to the remaining width, which is 35%. Then we'll set the background color to a grayish color, and this will be hex F5, F5, F5. We'll give it padding 3%. Change the flex direction to column, and we'll set the overflow equal to auto. Again, because we want to be able to scroll on this column if we need to. And that's all we're going to do for column 3. We'll come back to this column when we finish column 2. But now if we go back here, we see the background color coming through. So all of the 3 columns are taking form. So the first thing we need to do here is add a heading tag. And if we go back to the design, we see this is welcome back and then the name. We'll say welcome back. And then for the name, we want to bold this. So we need another flex. We'll add the name. And we now need to add some styles to this, because if we don't, it will be like this, and we want them in line. So let's say font weight equals bold, and then we need to say display, and we'll set that to inline flex. And now they should be on the same line. Awesome. Now let's add some styles to the heading. We'll say font weight is normal and not bold. We'll give margin bottom equal to 4, and we'll make the letter spacing tight, like we're doing for all the headers. Next up is the chart. But before we do that, we have 2 more texts here. So let's add the first text, my balance. The color for this text is gray, and the font size is small. And then we have a text underneath it, which is the amount, so 575000 or 20. The font size here is 2XL, and we need to change this color to a font weight property and set it to bold. Awesome. Now it's time for the chart. So we're going to be using chart.js, but we're not going to be interacting directly with chart.js. We're going to be using React Chart.js 2, which is a wrapper for chart.js, specifically for React. And the chart we're using is the line chart, the basic type. So here's what that kind of looks like. Go ahead and click GitHub source. So you could go ahead and copy this and add it to your application. However, some of this is outdated. For example, this options here will not work. So instead, I recommend you go to my code and paste in what I have. So as you can see, it's very similar. We have the data, we have the labels, and then some options here. So I can set a bunch of different properties. And then down here we have the options. So we're setting the scales. We are removing the grid lines on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis, those grid lines, what I'm doing is I am setting a border dash. So I believe this first 3 here is the width of the line, and this second one is the spacing, but it might be reversed. And then I'm removing the legend, and we are returning that chart. Again, all of this additional stuff, like the options, can be found on chartjs.org. So once we have the chart, we need to go ahead and use it. So we can just throw that right below here. So the final thing for the second column is this table here. So let's add a flex. We're going to say justify content, space between, and we're going to give the margin top, set that to 8. Now we need another flex here, which will have our heading of transactions, and it will have our text of April 2021. And below that flex, we have an icon button. And the icon is FI calendar. So that's this right here. Let's go ahead and style this a bit. We're going to align everything in here to flex end. That should drop it down. And then on the heading, we're going to make this an H2 tag. We're going to set the size to large. And like we've been doing, the letter spacing will be set to tight. And then this text here, the font size will be small. The color will be gray. And the margin left will be 4. Now before we do the table, we actually need to wrap this in 2 flex tags. And by doing that, we will be able to achieve this scroll effect. So when the screen gets smaller like this, you see we can scroll like that, and we can scroll all the way down. And that is thanks to wrapping the table in 2 flex widgets. So we have 1 and 2. Now the first one, we're going to set the flex direction to column. And the second one, we're going to simply set the overflow equal to auto. Now we can paste in our table. So we'll use the table tag. We can use the Chakra variant property to say unstyled, and we'll give it margin top of 4. We'll use the table head tag, and below that we'll use the table body tag. Now let me go ahead and paste in the headers. So here are the headers. We're setting the font color to gray, just like that. And now for the body, we'll say TR, which is 1 table row. Inside of here, we have a TD tag for each of our elements. So in the second one here, we have the text electronic devices. The third and fourth are both is numeric, and this is plus $2. And then this one here, we need to add some text styling. So let's actually add a text widget. We'll say minus $242, and then outside of here, .00. Now this text will have a font weight of bold. And if we go back here, we need to change the display to inline, not flex, but inline table. Okay, just like that. And the first table cell is kind of complicated because we have this image and the 2 text blocks. So we can achieve this effect by just using flex tags. We'll have our main flex tag. We'll then have the avatar and 1 more flex. And the second flex will have the heading, and we'll have the text. So the avatar size will be small, margin right will be 2, And the src for this first one is amazon.jpg. And that should be JPEG. Okay. The heading is Amazon. Set the size to small and the letter spacing to tight. Here we'll set the font size again to small and the color will be gray. Let's go ahead and add some text, just like that. And then on this flex here, we can say align equals center. And we also need to add flex direction column so we can get these to stack on top of each other. So that is how we're going to do each of these rows. And if we go back here, we see we have 3 of these plus an option to show more. So I'm going to copy and paste this 2 more times. All right, so 2 more rows. And if we go back here, we see them. So now we need to add this feature here. If you click it, it expands the table. So we can easily do that with our React useState hook. So at the top, right before the return statement, we'll say const display, comma, change display. And that equals useState. And we'll set this initial value to hide. So if you're not familiar with useState, I have a video on that. However, it's pretty simple. We basically declare a variable display, setting it initially to hide, and then a method change display that we can use to change this value. So if we come back down to our table, inside of table body, let's wrap another 3 rows, but we're going to use some JavaScript. And inside of here, we can say display equal show, and then we'll use an empty tag like this, and then we can paste this in again. So for simplicity, we're just going to use the same values. So basically what we're saying is if display is equal to show, show all these values. So now what we're going to do is below the table, remember we have a flex here. So below this flex, let's create another flex. And inside of here, we're going to have a button that will change the display. So icon button, and we're going to set this dynamically. So we're going to say if display is equal to show, then we want to show the up arrow, else show the down arrow. And if we go back here, we see that it's down. And that's because display is not show. It is none, or whatever we sent it to initially, or hide. So display right now is hide. And then we also need an onClick event. So onClick, we can create our method and do it right inside of here. So we'll say if display is equal to show, change display to none. And then else, display is obviously none, so we want to change it to show. So now if we go back here, display is none, click it, it changes to show. And the icon changes as well. And we can click it again to hide. So now we're just going to add some dividers to make it a bit cleaner. We'll add a divider here, and a divider here. And then we just need to add an align property and align everything to the center. Alright, there we go. So that looks really nice now. And that also completes our second column. So on to the third column. So we'll start with this search box and this icon. We'll move down to this, my cards, You see we have a card slider here, so we're going to use the useState hook again to change the card. And we have just some basic stuff down here. Again, we have Chakra elements for all of this. Let's first create a flex. We'll say align content is equal to center. Inside of here, we're going to have an input group. Then we can use the input left element property. And we'll set the children equal to fi search. And we'll set the color to gray. And let's set the pointer events to none. And then below we can set the input. The type is a number. Placeholder will be search. And border radius will be 10 pixels. And then let me paste a couple of properties onto this input group. We'll set the background color to white, give it some margin on the bottom and right, border radius 10 pixels to match this border radius, and set the border color to white. And set the border to none. So that's how that looks. Now we need the icon. That will be an icon button. The icon will be fi bell. And let's apply some properties on here. Font size small. Background color white. A border radius of 50%. And some padding of 10 pixels. And this should be background color, not clip. There we go. Now we need to add this little icon here, so the notifications. For that, we're going to use a flex and create our own little notification dot. So all we need inside of here is 2, and we need to apply a bunch of styles to get this situated correctly. Let's first give it a width of 30. Now a height of 25. A background color of that nice pink. That's B5, 7295, and a border radius of 50%. Okay, that's how that looks now. Set the color of that 2 to white. We'll align everything to the center. We'll justify everything to the center. Now we need to shift this to the left a bit and up a bit. We'll use margin left for that. We need to say -3 because we want it to move to the left. There we go. And margin top is -2. Now we have a problem that it's behind the icon. So to fix that, we'll use the index. We'll just set this to 100. And finally, let's make the font size a bit smaller. Maybe we'll try extra small. Alright, let's move on. Let's add a heading. My cards. Set the letter spacing to tight. And that should not be there. That, I believe, should be below this flex. Alright, there we go. That's looking a lot better. So now we have the cards. So again, like I said, we're going to use useState for this. So we're going to make 3 cards. Each of them will be the exact same. I'm just going to change up the background color. But we need to use useState again. So back at the top, create another useState variable. We'll change this to value. Change this to change value, and the initial value will be 1. So we're just going to use 1, 2, and 3. So we'll say value equals to 1 and show the first card, which will be a box. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll copy this. We'll have value equal to 2, value equal to 3. So let's build out the first card, and then I'll copy and paste it 2 more times. Because like I said, they're going to be very similar. So for this box, we'll set the border radius equal to 25 pixels. The margin top will be 4. The width will be 100%. The height will be 200 pixels. And the background gradient, which is the magic CSS style here, will be linear. Then we can say T0T, so to top, comma. Let's first put in our first CSS hex, B57295, so that pink, comma, 29259A. And if we take a look at this, that's the style we get. Now inside of here, we're simply going to use a bunch of flex tags and text and heading tags to style all of this. So I'm actually going to go ahead and paste this code in because it's not very complicated. It's just, like I said, a bunch of flex tags and text tags. Alright, so this is what I pasted in. All of this. Like I said, not too bad, just wrapping a bunch of flex tags, using justify space between for most of it, and some dummy text. But that's what we get out of that. So this is the first card. We need to do this 2 more times. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it 2 times. Alright, so here's the third one, value equal to 3, and here's the second one. I changed up the background gradient, and I switched the numbers around a bit. So now we need a way to change. So we're going to use 3 buttons. First, we'll wrap them in a flex tag, justify the content to the center, and give this a margin top of 2. Make these self-closing. Now the background color, we need an active background color and a not active. So we're going to simply check if the value is equal to 1. If it is, we'll give it a gray 600 or active, and if it's not, give it a gray .400. Copy and paste this 2 more times, and we need to check if it's equal to 2 or 3. There we go. So only the first one is active because the initial value is 1. And we also need an onClick listener. Again, let's invoke our method right away, and we're going to change the value. So if the first one is clicked, change it to 1. If the second one is clicked, change it to 2. And if the third one is clicked, change it to 3. And before we test this out, let me give 2 more properties. We'll say size equal to XS, and MX is equal to 1, or the margin to the left and the right. Okay, here we go. Now if we click the second one, the value changes to 2, and the card changes as well. And you can see we have an active color. Alright, next up, this little section here. Create another flex. The direction will be column. And we'll give some margin Y, some margin to the top and bottom, set it to 4. A little flex in here. Justify the items to space between. And we'll set the margin bottom equal to 2. Outside of here, we have 2 text tags. The first text is balance, and the second text is the number. And we'll make the second text bold. And the second one is very similar. We'll say credit limit, and we'll change the value to 150. Alright, moving on. We can do a heading tag. This says send money to. This is a heading, so let's make the letter spacing tight. We'll make the size medium, and we'll make the margin Y 4. Now below this, we're going to make an avatar group. So in the design, it's like this, but Chakra gives us something called avatar group, and by using that we get this little effect. And this right here is actually calculated dynamically. So we're going to use that instead. Let's wrap it all in a flex, and then we can say avatar group. We can set the size equal to medium, and this takes in a property called max. And this is the max number of avatars shown. So we'll set this to 3. Now we can throw in as many avatars as we want inside of here with their respective src. So here's the first one. If we go back, we see that coming through. And we can copy this and paste it a couple more times. Okay, so here are the rest of the avatars. And you'll see I have 4 3 times. However, the max is 3, so we'll only show that once. And then we get that +2 here because there are currently 2 extras. Now we need this plus over here. That is a avatar with a icon of fi plus. And I'm going to paste a few styles. Margin left 2, color white, and background color gray. Alright, and the final part is this input form. So 2 inputs and a button. Again, Chakra has tags for that. We'll drop below this flex, and we'll first use the text widget. This will be card number. We'll set some styles. The color will be gray. Margin top will be 10. And the margin bottom will be 2. Now below this, we have an input group. We can use the input left element property. And we can use the input. Now for the input, the type will be number. And we'll set the placeholder, oops, not place content, placeholder equal to a credit card. So we'll just do something like this. Now the input left element, we'll say pointer events equal none. And again, we'll set the children equal to our icon, which will be the credit card icon. And we'll change the color to gray 700. All right, there we go. Now we need that one more time. So I'm gonna copy this. We'll change this card number to sum. This can all stay the same, except we'll change this to $fi $. In the placeholder here, we can change to 130.00. Now we have that twice. And finally, we have a button. We'll set the margin top to 4. We'll set the background color to black alpha .900. The color, so the text color, will be white. And we'll set some padding. Make that 7. Finally, set the border radius to 15. And last but not least, we need the actual text, which is send money. So here is that button. So this is the completed dashboard. However, as you can see, it is not responsive. So what we're going to do now is make it responsive. So the first thing to do is to make the columns stack on a certain breakpoint. So we'll start with column 3. All right, so here's column 3. Right now we have a width of 35%. That's hard-coded. What we can do is we can make this into a list and change it dynamically. So we can do that like this, and that takes in as many values as we want. So we can pass in 100%, comma 100%, and then 35%. And these are breakpoints. And we're also going to set the min width for this final column. Again, this will be a list. We're going to say null, comma, null, comma, 300 pixels, comma, 300 pixels, comma, 400 pixels. So I have 5 values here, and if we go to the Chakra default theme, here are the default breakpoints. So there are actually 5 of them, and these are the exact values. So that's for each of the 5. All right, so that's for column 3. Let's go do the same for column 2. So for this width, we have 55%. Let's make it a list. Let me do this. Okay, so we have 5 values. So it starts at 55%. We're going to make it 60% at this breakpoint. Keep it 60 here. And then finally at the smaller breakpoints, make it 100. And you might be wondering why I'm increasing it here. Well, if we're increasing by 5, we need to take 5 from somewhere else. And that is going to be taken from the first column, because if you recall, the first column shrunk into just the icons. So that's where we get this extra 5% from. So the rest of this is fine. Let's go to the first column now. So here's the width. It's 15%, but we need 5 of these, so that's 5. So it starts at 15. It goes 15 here, and then here it's 10, and then finally ends at 100. We need to make this a column at a certain breakpoint. So copy this, make it a list, and we're going to change it to column here. So column, column. And then the height, right now it's 100 view height, which is good. But when it stacks, we don't want a specified height. So we're just going to send that to null. So only take up the height that you need to take up. Now if we go back here, we should see that take effect. Let's scroll, and there we go, right about there. And you can see everything is stacking. So this first one, we should fix the height of that first column. And that is right here. So we have a hard-coded height of 100 view height. We're going to change these to null. All right, and there we go. So it stacks. So everything scrolls, everything's working fine. So a couple more things to do to make this fully responsive. I want to change this so that it goes to a row, so it's a bit cleaner. And then also, right here, we need to make only the icon appear. And those are the only 2 things we need to do to make this 100% responsive. So we'll start with the left icons. So that is these here. And essentially what we're going to do is on the links, we need to just set display dynamically. And again, we have 5 values. So it's flex start at the beginning. It's flex start here. Then we want it to go center for the rest. And then the icon, in order to hide this, we can again set the display property as a list. And we need 5 values here. We're going to say display none, display none, display none, and then the last 2 are display flex. So if we take a look at what that is doing, so when it gets small enough, the icon disappears from here, so that's good. But the text is not disappearing, so let's add some display for the text. So to do that, we're going to add the display on the link, and I'm going to copy this. So we want flex, we want none here, and then we want it to go back to flex. So let's see how that looks. So as I scroll in, so it disappears, and I just realized this should be flex. So flex display for the first 3 breakpoints and then none for the last ones. So let's see, as I scroll in, there we go, we see that still there, and then boom, it's gone, and the text is back. So let's do that for all of that column. That for everything. Now each one has the displays and the margins. So now, if we scroll, there we go, and they're back. So let's align these to the center. We're going to do that on this main flex here. So let's format this up a bit better. Justify content center will stay the same, but align will move into a list. So our 5 values for this are center, 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 and then flex start and flex start. So let's check out how this looks now. So now they're in the center, and we need to change the direction too, because we want this flex direction to be row on these final 2 breakpoints. So that's how we can do that. So there we go. And boom, now they're displaying in the row. So 2 things I noticed here. 1, the margin. We need to remove the margin bottom on the first 3. And then also, let's make this a bit smaller. So we'll do that first. Here's the heading, font size 4XL. Let's go ahead and paste in some new styles. So get a bit smaller, and then you can get back to larger. And then let's also add some styles for margin bottom, make it a bit smaller as the screen gets smaller. And to finally remove the margin bottom, we can do that inside of global.css using media queries. And this will look something like that. So when the screen gets below 767 pixels, make the margin bottom 0 for all of the sidebar items. And here we see that is working. So this is the final product. As you can see, our main view, desktop view, we have the nav on the left, this middle section, and the right section. And as you get smaller, it is responsive. So that's it for this video, guys. As a reminder, all of the code for this video can be found on my GitHub. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.